Hi, everyone. I just want to say hello. My name is Michelle Hickey. I work with Dennis Miller, and we've been working together for about 16 years. I want to welcome you to what every nonprofit CEO needs to know to, hold on, I want to get the whole title here, to do to lead their organization successfully through the coronavirus pandemic. It's 1 o'clock. People are still joining us, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Just a couple of housekeeping items. If you haven't already, please turn your audio to mute and turn your webcam off. There will be time at the end of the webinar for questions and answers with our speaker, Dennis. You can just type your question into the chat box. You can either send it publicly to everyone, or if you want to remain anonymous or you feel like it's a sensitive question, you can always send it just to Dennis Miller host, which is, I will see your message and I will be able to let Dennis know that he's got a question. There will be recording of the webinar and it will include the slides. So if you feel like there's something you missed or you want to share it with someone else, we will have that available for you in a couple of days. So I'm just going to continue. People are continuing to join us, but I want to make sure we keep going. Our speaker today is Dennis Miller, and he is the president of Dennis Miller Associates. A lot of you are probably already familiar with Dennis and his work. He has, in his 40 or so year career, advised hundreds of nonprofit organizations around the country on how to achieve their highest potential. He's worked with them on improving board governance, leadership development, strategic planning, and philanthropy. And he is a very in-demand speaker, retreat facilitator, leadership coach, and executive consultant. So I'm going to go find Dennis in my list of participants so that I can bring him in. And there you go. Hang on 1 second, Dennis, and I will unmute you. Dennis, are you there?
I'm here.
All right, well, welcome. And just so you know, Dennis, people are still joining us. I'm just kind of letting everybody in as they arrive.
Did I hear you tell people I have 40 years of experience?
I know, well, I know. You did just share that with me, but that's okay. That's a good thing.
25. I feel younger with 25, Michelle, you know?
I'll remember that for the future.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. Welcome, everyone. I want to start by thanking all of you. We have quite a crowd today participating in today's conversation webinar, and many of you I know, and many of you are a new time, but I want to thank you because of the efforts that all of you are putting in during this extremely difficult time. Your tireless dedication, your commitment to your organization's mission and your quest for excellence is amazing. So I want to recognize all of you individually, and I appreciate very much the work that you are doing here. I was talking to Michelle earlier today, the fact that I used to tell people I had 25 years of experience, and then I started saying people had 35 years of experience, and I seem to skip over 30, but I haven't fully admitted 40 years of experience. But I actually graduated from Columbia University School of Public Health 40 years ago and could never have imagined back then at Columbia University Medical Center the having such a catastrophic event like we're going through now. So I appreciate everything that all of you are doing, and I thank you. I want to start with that here. Michelle, we go to the first slide if we can. I'm going to focus in on 6 topics today. And again, we have plenty of resources to give you. As Michelle said, everybody's going to get a copy of the slides, a recording of the slides. You have a chance to ask questions. Your name will not be cited. So, and all questions are good. If you have a question or you think about asking a question, ask it because your colleagues may think of it. There's no silly question at all to ask. And if there is a silly question, we'll just have a laugh or whatever. So I'm going to talk about emotional intelligence, CEO board partnership, leadership assessment and development, a culture of philanthropy, building a positive identity, and being an inspirational, motivational leader. Those are the 6 topics today I think we need to have for leaders dealing with this unbelievable crisis. Next. It's unfathomable what's happening. We all know that. I'm on the East Coast here for a lot of people around the rest of the country here, and obviously we're having a very difficult time here. But we know I know how challenging it is. I know you know how difficult it is trying to cope with this uncertainty and the changing landscape and all the impact that we're having here. But the point of today is to let everybody know that you are not alone, that we really are in this together. And I want you to feel a sense of bonding from all of us here. And also, just before we kind of move on here, I want to certainly not only thank Michelle for helping me put this together, but our entire senior team of people that have done a wonderful job with the webinar series: Gregory Nielsen, Joe Duffy, Susan Hastron, Anthony Pantaloni, and Michelle. We got more to come here. So I want to thank them. They've doing a great job here. Next. So perhaps I think today's time, there's probably nothing, there's no competency needed today more than ever before to lead your organization that has emotional intelligence. So what is emotional intelligence? Many people know it as sort of emotional quotient, EQ. Basically, simply, it's the ability to identify and manage your emotions and the emotions of other people. That's what it kind of boils down to. You all know how anxious everybody feels. Now, we've all been in this at least for 2 months now, and the panic has been severe. The death rate is unbelievable, and so make sure as a leader you are emphasizing with people's feelings and make them feel safe to discuss their fears openly. You want to be empathetic. You want to make sure that every time you're talking to people, you kind of have that, I know how difficult this is for you and your family and your entire staff here. Yes, there are things that have to be done work-wise. I know most of you and all of us are working remotely from home, but understanding the fears that people are having here, this is a very unique time here. So this is not just a time for intellectual intelligence. This is a time for emotional intelligence. Be honest and truthful, and they're not the same. Being truthful means actively communicating all the facts that you know of the matter for your organization. Being honest means not telling lies. And yet at the same time, you need to be truthful about your organization's financial challenges and the fact that many and millions of people are being laid off around the country and many times in your organization. At the same time, even when you don't feel it, try to remain as optimistic as possible during this very difficult period of time. So people who are emotionally intelligent can do the following things here. Certainly identify what you are feeling, can interpret your own emotions. No overreaction. This is not the time to be overreacting because you're anxious and fearful. That's not going to help the situation. Understand how your own emotions as a leader can impact others. I mean, you need to be truthful. You need to be honest here, but you're kind of being the role model now. And so even when there's days that you are, your own fears and anxieties and whether you're even going to remain as an organization here, it is really, really, really important to watch how you behave and how you talk because people are going to watch you, okay? It's a time for regulating your own emotions and managing other people's emotions because they're going to be having fear. And sometimes those emotions are going from home into the workplace and make it challenging and difficult. It's your job as a leader to address them. So emotional intelligence is the first thing we need to address. Later on, I'm going to talk about a wonderful book, a resource for you, Daniel Goldberg on emotional intelligence. I highly recommend that. Next. So questions oftentimes asked is, can we learn this? Well, the good news is that it can be learned. I mean, there are some people that are just have natural talent for it, okay? Some people are born with certain things and it's just a natural talent for emotional. That was not me. but certainly you can learn it. And there's a lot of research and information that supports that fact that you can learn it. We're going to provide some resources for you at the end of the webinar and forward it to you about that here. But don't poo-poo this. Being able to effectively do your job at work, we're going to require a new emotional intelligence. And to make that happen, you're going to have to be personally motivated to do this here. So I remember when I wrote my first book came out in 2007, and I talked about relationship building and how some people sort of poo-pooed that idea here. You all know Michael Jordan, the famous basketball player, but he famously said, talent wins games, but teamwork wins championships. So emotional intelligence is a crucial factor for all of you. And I would love to have you focus in on that. Next, Michelle. CEO board partnership. This is clearly a time for you to discuss with your board new collaborative ways to survive this unprecedented pandemic here. Now, I know most boards, and we have a lot of board members on the discussion here today, understand their role of, Michelle, go back just a second here, understand their role of sort of normal fiduciary responsibilities, that's a legal requirement, and the business strategic advisory roles. But there's two things that I often talk about with boards. I sometimes be a little provocative, I ask people, what's the number one reason you have a board? And people give the answers. The number one reason is because A, it's legal required. But the second reason for your board is to help your organization reach its potential. And to do that, okay, we need to move beyond just a business advisory role and a strategic advisory role that's passive. And at the end of the board meeting, you'll kind of see them next month or something like that. They need to become your true partner and develop a sense of ownership of your organization. I'm going to give you a couple examples in a second. So move to the next slide here. Everybody's familiar probably with the 4 stages of nonprofit board governance. We're also going to show you a resource later on, a book, Governance as Leadership, that I read 15 years ago. It was a wonderful book with Harvard researchers. A little technical at times, but that's what research is. But we all know about the founding board. Everybody's organization starts with some founding situation, and then eventually you bring on teams and staff to do the work. Occasionally there's a founder that can't let control. We have a founding syndrome. We all know the fiduciary role of a board, the legal requirements of a board, and the strategic business advisory role, but a lot of times it's all in favor, say aye. So we want to move to a stage of a board of leadership. And let me give you an example, if we can, of what that means here. Next slide. I want to have you think about this here. It's not up there per se. I want you to think about what I call the 50% rule. So imagine your next board meeting, and they're virtual, and Greg Renew did a great job presenting virtual board meetings a week or so ago. But I want you to think about this. Imagine this taking place. I want to having a board meeting, have the meeting called to order, or, I want to have minutes approved from the last meeting. All in favor, say aye, or say fine. And next item on the agenda today, we're going to talk about the impact we're having in our community. Or we're going to talk about the value we provide to our community. Well, we're going to talk about what distinguishes ourselves from the community here. We need to start having a conversation with our board that goes beyond the fiduciary, beyond the advising role, beyond all in favor say aye role, of becoming partners and owners with you. And I think the best way of doing that is beginning to, as a CEO and as a board member, is begin engaging everybody in that conversation. You all know at every board meeting, there are 2 people that don't shut up, and there are 2 or 3 people that don't say anything. We have to make sure that everybody's participating, and the best way of doing that is engaging in a conversation. So half the time, on average, half the time, what I call the 50% rule, I'd like to see you think about half your board meeting talking about a strategic issue that you're impacting with today, or maybe impacting tomorrow. The committee reports are important here. It's important to have a good committee structure, but I'm saying is that we want to move beyond that to be engaging people in our pursuit of our vision. CEOs and board partnerships are very performance and results driven, not process driven. They are very eager to measure communicated achievements. I often ask boards, how do you measure success? And what do they mean? Organizational success, board success. How do you measure success? We'll get that a little bit later on here. They are very attentive to good recruitment and reappointment practices, which is beyond the scope of today's session here. But there's some fabulous, really great ways of recruiting based upon developing an ideal matrix of competencies, not skills. Clearly, a high-performing CEO board partnership is involved with identifying potential new board leadership and a commitment to leadership succession, not waiting to the end. And there's a lot of work on that here. And there are active participants in philanthropy, which we're going to touch upon in a few minutes here, but that is kind of crucial. And last but not least, I always tell people, a good board evaluates their CEO, a great board evaluates itself here. We need the courage to begin to open ourselves up, to be self-critical, to assess ourselves and how well we're doing at both at the CEO level, but at the board level here. So having a new type of relationship with your board, not just because you need them to approve your budget and approve this or approve that here, but wanting to engage them as your partner. That's your job as a CEO. Next. You know, leadership assessment and development here. I mean, you know, it's things like, oh my God, the last thing I need to do is do something else right now. I'm just trying to, you know, put out fires here. Actually, this is a wonderful time and a great time to be having your leadership talent assessed and developing. This is the time right now through the coronavirus pandemic here, when you're working at home and you're whatever is going on here. And I'll tell you what, to implement an organization-wide leadership succession program. Next slide, please. You asked me why. I'm going to explain it's relatively easy to do. It costs very little to do, okay? But it can create a sense of optimism and a sense of personal security for them to feel that you as a leader are thinking about them in their future. What better thing can you do? Go back. What better thing can you do and think of, you know, putting emotional intelligence, but think about conveying to them through a leadership development program about your belief in them and in wanting to invest in them. Investing in your team's development during this really difficult time and helping them build their skills and competencies and self-confidence. Now, skills, we know what things we learn on the job, like how to do accounting books, debits and left, credits to the right. Competence is about how well we do things, and self-confidence is that sense of in ourselves about how we feel very positive. There's nothing better you can do right now during this coronavirus pandemic to initiate a leadership assessment development program, and we'll provide some tools for you to do that as well. Next slide, please. So how does one go about leadership succession planning? Now, most of us, historically, when we hear the term leadership succession planning, we are thinking about what happens when the CEO gets hit by the bus. We have a tendency to think it's just the top only. When I'm using the word leadership, I'm describing everyone in your organization, from weekend supervisor to middle management, director, vice president, all the way up. Everybody, I'm using the word leadership capacity here. And so one of the things, probably the biggest thing that you really kind of want to do is really to think about what are the challenges that you as an organization are going to be facing over the next couple of years, this year now and going forward here, and what are the competencies and skills needs. So you want to proactively identify and develop new leaders. You want to identify the skills and competencies that each leadership position, not personality, but leadership position will need to have. And I want to talk about right now a 5-step program for developing a leadership program that you can do now. I just said, first goal is identify your strategic goals. I know surviving is probably a big goal, but there's a number of strategic goals we can have in your vision. So what ultimately is your strategic goal for your organization right now? So many of you are running nonprofits in your local community. That we have a number of people on the call that are CEOs of both statewide and national professional trade groups. What is your table of organization? How are we going to develop profiles for each of these positions? Let people know that we're going to be developing a talent pool of potential leaders, and we want to communicate this to the organization. So the first step is identify the goals and put out your management table organization so everybody knows those positions, whether it's 5 or 50 or 500 in your organization that are potential to be part of this. Next slide. For each position in your organization, each position of leadership, what are the competencies and skills and experience and attributes that that position needs to be successful? Every position in your organization should have identified for them the competencies, the skills, the experience, and the attributes needed for success. And you probably want to consider within your organization different levels of this leadership development. You could have an entire leadership council team for everybody. You can have an executive leadership team, those that report directly to the CEO, a senior level that reports to those that report to the CEO, a management level, staff level. But you want to create leadership levels and leadership councils within your organization. Number 3. Now, everybody who's currently a leader or in a position of leadership may not be selected. You hopefully are doing performance reviews of people on your team. How well are they performing? And hopefully you're not waiting just to the end of the year to let them know here. But perhaps you want to identify as a reward your top 10 or 20% of your performers. And in addition to that, consider using a talent assessment tool, which will provide resources to you about a 360 process. And now you can begin to identify and build up your leadership council, because you're going to reward people who have been performing well, and they can go home to their husband, their wife, their kids, their family, and everybody else and say, boy, I'm thrilled. I just been asked to be a part of a leadership council at my organization here. What a positive reinforcement. And for those that have not, perhaps it's a time to have a conversation and say, listen, you were close. We'd like to, but you need to come in every day on time. You need to have a positive attitude on time, et cetera, et cetera. You need to be a team player. So this is a time to begin to identify your high performers in your organization. Step 4. Develop a professional program. We'll provide you a range of topics that you can have here, but you want to create an individual professional development plan for each of your top performers. They're not going to be the same here. Your council members, your HR, if you have someone in HR, they can help you with this. If you don't have someone in HR, there's a ton of stuff. Next slide, Michelle. There's a ton of stuff online courses, there's books, there's articles and conferences, particularly online stuff these days. Your own staff can be identified as a mentor to someone to mentor your managers and your leaders here. What a better way of partnerships of utilizing someone that you rely upon on your team to mentor somebody else here. Occasionally, there may be need to engage an outside expert on certain topics here, but for the most part, I think you really want to try to do this within yourself if you can, depends upon the size of your organization. And for those of you that are involved in statewide and or national organizations, this is a great time to create value for your members by creating an association-wide leadership development program and identifying mentors. So if you have a trade group of, say, 50 members or 30 members in your state, this is a time to have everybody get together in that group, identifying the leaders, identifying the topics, mentors, and books, promote your program, manage participants' progress, no different as it would anything else here, and report on your results. I think today it is not, to be put off. I think leadership assessment, leadership development has numerous positive benefits of doing that today. Okay, a culture of philanthropy. Who doesn't need money? Okay, who doesn't need money? But we all know that so many of us, we struggle with this, right? We struggle with the idea of a culture of philanthropy, and everybody's like, how can I raise money now because there's so many people unemployed here. But there's a process we need to take to create a culture of philanthropy, and that helps you not only just to align your contributors with you, but it's going to help you survive and succeed. So let's move to the next section. I'm a Diet Peach iced tea drinker, so I had to get a little grasp of it. We all know that everybody relies upon philanthropic support, almost everybody. And we know right now that, your galas and your golf outings are being postponed or delayed until the fall. However, this is an excellent time. Right now, this is an excellent time to be actually seeking investments from donors to sustain your mission. And I'll tell you this, you all know that your galas and everything else you have is basically 50 cents on a dollar you're going to raise here. I was very, I've been fortunate to do well for myself. And the other day I got a call from someone or an email about could I make a contribution? And I said, absolutely. I give to our local United Way. I give to our soup kitchens and things like that here. But this is not a time to be necessarily panicking. There's an opportunity here. So let's talk about ways of making this an opportunity for you when your galas and everybody else has been postponing. Let's talk about the culture of philanthropy in your organization and the challenges you have. Next slide, Michelle. Anybody is my age or a little bit younger remembers the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's album and the song A Day in Life, and a good song here. And I want to use an analogy to a typical day in the life of the development committee that you may be having these virtually now, but you had them. And so the chairperson or woman calls the meeting to order to review the upcoming plan. There's some discussion of your gala, who we're going to honor. There's talk about what we already honored her last year or 2 years ago and where it's going to be held, what golf club, what country club, etc. Are we having a golf outing? Who's going to chair it this year? We're going to have a wine tasting. How much can we make? How much it's going to cost? Next slide. And then the conversation turns, okay, the chair of the committee says, okay, let's review the list of our major gift prospects that everybody was supposed to be giving. And the chair says, did anyone call anybody on the list? And you all know what happens. So some long dead silence. No one wants to participate. Very few sent their prospects. And the chair says, okay, let's move on to discuss the table settings. Let's put the prospect issue on the agenda for next month, maybe when more committee meetings will attend, leaving little achieved and little accomplished. So the question becomes, why? Why is raising money for most of us and you, why is raising money so challenging, so difficult? And it's for two reasons. One is the fear of rejection, and two is in spite of who you have on your board, whether they're the president of this company or that company or the bank or vice president of pharmaceutical sales, lack of self-confidence. So I want to talk briefly here today about moving from the tin cup theory of fundraising to the investment theory. So when I was a young boy, I grew up in Central Jersey. Every couple of years, my mom would take me and my brothers and maybe my sister, but she came along much later, into Manhattan, to the Port Authority bus terminal to go to see Radio City Music Show. And that back then there was no Ticketron, there was no online ordering. You got in line for 4 hours, you got friendly with your neighbors, and then you could go next door to Johnson & Johnson, get a hot chocolate here. But who was always outside the Port Authority building was this disheveled-looking guy sitting on a cardboard box selling pencils. And that's how most of us perceive fundraising, as begging, okay, begging. And so we think about it as kind of, if we ask someone and they say no, we're not conscious of it all the time, but we rather avoid it. It's just personal rejection. Who wants to get rejected here? Okay. So I'm going to tell you about a time almost 15 years ago. One of my first clients asked me to put on a workshop or a retreat, but a workshop on fundraising. And I remember saying, just fundraising, not leadership, just fundraising. I said, okay. And it was held in Flemington, New Jersey, in a kind of a neat little restaurant, a kind of hippie place, a little bit of hippie place, had the bead when you walked through the door. And it was across the street, I remember, from the famous courthouse where the Lindbergh baby, Bruno Happen, the trial took place. It was kind of a pretty historic place. And I remember meeting with this group of people that I didn't know. And I knew none of them really, except one person I think worked for one of my board members. And I remember starting the conversation off and asking them if they could tell me their top 2 achievements for this past year. This is a true story, I'll never forget it. And the woman says, well, we did our budget on time. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, okay, yeah, I'm choking. I mean, that's an achievement. And another woman says, we only spend 6% of our money or some percentage on fundraising. And I'm thinking to myself, it's going to be a long, painful night here at this restaurant. And a woman in the back of the room spoke up and says, and this organization, by the way, dealt with domestic violence and sexual assault. Okay. You may know the name of the organization. I'm not going to say it right now, but it changed its name since I first got there. We changed its name. But a woman in the back of the room says, we do a program called PALS. I said, what is that? She says, it stands for Peace, an Alternative Learning System. Goes, Dennis, we treat children who've been subjected to domestic violence and sexual assault. We treat them so they can learn to trust and have relationships again with other people. Other parents, surrogate parents, teachers, classmates. And I think to myself, Grand Slam, home run, bottom ninth, World Series, you just won the game. How do you communicate that success? How do you tell people that? And they realize we don't do a good job at that. I said, that's why you're not raising money here. So the question becomes, what is the impact that you're having during this coronavirus pandemic about philanthropy? And how are you communicating to your stakeholders, inside and out, the results and success you're having in some heartfelt manner? And I'm going to talk in a second here about, are you asking money for your organizational needs or for those you serve? So let's turn the subject to why people give. Oh, yeah, well, I think you would probably know. Not only do board members rather have a root canal, most of you would rather have a root canal. It's not a criticism, by the way, it's just an observation. Ask yourself truthfully, how many of you enjoy asking people for money or seeking donors and cultivation? Not a lot of people, okay. So that's a question to ask, but here's something I want to think about. You see the screen here, why people give. Now, you know most of this here. This is not, most of what I'm telling you is common sense. You know most of this, but I want to point out a couple of things if I can. Why people give money? Yes, you know, because if I was doing a retreat at your organization right and ask a question, people would say they want to give to a good cause, that they like people that work there, they make a difference in the world. That's all true. To someone because they trust and respect them, that is all true. They want to give, and it's, I mean, a lot of people, you know, even today, a lot of people can afford to give anything because they don't have any money. But fortunately, some people do, and if you have money, it's a joy to actually give if you can afford it, okay? And the number one reason people actually give money, believe it or not, is they've been asked. But there's two things on this list that I want to point out. If you come away with nothing else but this, I will feel positive about this, is this. People give to success, not to the stress. And people give to the needs of those you serve, not your organizational needs. I want to repeat that again. People give to success, not to the stress. So how well do you communicate to your stakeholders the impact you're having, particularly now? How are you communicating the impact you're having on people's lives? Because I know you're doing it today. I know you're impacting people, whether it's in education, healthcare, behavioral healthcare, children and family services, a whole range of things, criminal justice, environmental. You're trying to have an impact. How do you communicate that? If you understand that people give to success, not to the stress, the 10-cup theory isn't working. We got to move to that achievement society. And the next piece here is this. It might sound like wordsmithing, but oftentimes we asking for, yes, there are times when you need to ask for bricks and mortar. We need a new theater. We need a new hospital wing. We need a new building for a school. Sure. But if you focus in on the needs of those you serve and the successful impact you're having, you'll make a dramatic difference. I hope you take away. Next slide. Okay. So we know why people are uncomfortable with philanthropy in that world, because they're afraid if I ask them for money, they say no, there's going to be rejection. But we need to build up self-confidence. I said before, I don't care how many people you have on your board that are the president of a local bank and this and that, and community leadership. Very few people have training and experience to be good at the world of fundraising. So I'm going to go over what I call the tri-partnership that I want you to think about for your organization going forward, including your own role here. So the three-legged stool, how it stands together here. Before I move on to the slide, Michelle, I just want to comment. I'm sure most of you know this. The average tenure for a development officer in this country is 18 months to 2 years. The average tenure for a development officer. And so that means that some people, they're 12 years and some people they're 12 minutes. So how do we work together as a team to create the culture of philanthropy we need to have and build people's self-confidence. Let's move on, Michelle. So what's the role of you? CEO, executive director, titles don't mean much to me. As a CEO, you need to be the chief sales officer. CEO to me stands for Chief External Officer. You need to be out in the community selling your organization's success, selling about the great things that you're doing here. You're the Chief Relationship Officer. People will view you. You'll become the brand. In few cases, there may be the board chair as the brand, but in most cases, in the nonprofit sector, it's the CEO, executive director, that's the brand. Be the chief brand builder. I'm going to talk about that in a minute here, but be the chief communicator. Yes, I want you to be involved in cultivation and solicitation because at your level you need to be, but these are the 4 things you need to be in your role here, and none of those should require you to want to stick pins in your eyes. Next. So if you're the chief development officer, what's your role? Well, you're going to be the quarterback. You're going to help organize. We're going to get the board. You're going to help organize and develop a comprehensive and diversified plan of giving. You know, we're not going to be, you know, people think sometimes the money's in corporations. 15% is. So you want to be creating a developer office, a case for support, why people should give to you, and not only how you will benefit from their donation, but more importantly, how will the donor benefit? How will the donor benefit? Your job is to be prospect relationships, be educated to the board, yes, be part of the solicitation team, and more important, be acknowledging it. But you are one player. Too often, before we move on, too often what happens is that the organization hires a development officer, and the board chair turns to the CEO and say, "How's Joe or Betty doing so far? They bringing in any money yet?" And the development officer says, "I thought you were going to help me." It's not, you know, development is not a department. It's not where is, you know, where's your quality assurance department? You know, up on second floor down the end. Where's finance? Third floor over to your right. Where's development? Downstairs in the basement or out back in the garage. This is a culture that one can create. I know you can create it because I helped create a culture. So CEO role, development role, what's the role for the board then? Michelle? Oh, there you go. Okay. Couple of things here that's very important to me, and I hope for you. And I know you agree with the need for creating a culture of philanthropy here. And in wondering, is this the right time to do it? And I'm going to tell you, it is the right time to do it. You want your board to certainly be your advocate and your ambassador. You want them to be the communicator of your achievements. Yes, you want them participating in events and writing personal notes and things like that. But I want to go over this here. I know there's 1,000 books written about asking for money. And I know there's 1,000 conferences a year in the country and webinars and all kind of things about philanthropy and online donor systems and all this stuff. Major gifts, annual plan, blah, 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 grant writing, I know that. But I want my board, I don't want them asking for money. I know that's going to shock a lot of people, but I don't want them asking for money because A, with few exceptions, and there are exceptions, with few exceptions, they don't know how to ask. They're going to ask for too little or accept too little. They ask for $1 million and someone gave them $1,000, they'll take it and go be happy to home. I don't want my board to ask. I want my board to do this. Let's assume you've got 10 people on your board. 10, let's say 10. I just want them on an annual basis to help us identify 3 to 5 prospective donors a year, 3 to 5. An individual, a family, a corporation, okay, or individual, family, corporation, or a business, or a foundation, I'm sorry. Individual, family, corporation, business. I sound like I'm the former governor of Texas there. So if you have 10 people, you will have at least 30 potential prospects that you as a CEO, your chief development officer, and you as a board member can work together on, collaborate on cultivating a relationship with them. It's not about how do we find the richest person in town who lives up on the hill, because unless they are connected to you, they're not going to give you anything. And this is not a fear of rejection. If your board members cannot help you cultivate and be willing to invest their time and effort in helping cultivate a relationship. Perhaps having a phone call with you as a CEO, perhaps having a phone call with your development officer, having a breakfast meeting, having them come on a tour of your organization, inviting them as your guest to a gala or a fundraiser or whatever. That is the role I want for the board here. And think about this for a second. You know, we oftentimes drill down on our board their roles and responsibilities, right? You know, your role and responsibility is to raise money, blah, 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 blah. You know what? It's like telling your kids to clean their room. You know, after a while, you just leave the pizza boxes in the kids' room and let them suffocate until the doors open up here. Going, reminding them about their roles and responsibilities is not helping when they lack self-confidence. You can drive at home all day long. If someone lacks self-confidence, they're not going to be able to do it here. So I want to focus in on understanding that you can create a culture of philanthropy by creating a tri-partnership that builds people's self-confidence and avoids the fear of rejection, because they're no longer going to be asking for yourselves. They're going to be asking for investments to continue your achievement. Next. So there's at least 3 questions that not only every board member should answer, but everybody in your organization should answer. And how about, we talked about earlier about the 50% rule about asking your board to be a partner. How about starting a board meeting, but have these questions here. And can everybody answer this? What's the value we provide to our community? What's wrong with that as a top discussion at a board meeting? How about talking about our top achievements? Would you say your top achievement is really completing your budget on time? Really? And more importantly, why is your organization worthy of a gift? How do you distinguish yourselves from other people here? You can create a culture of philanthropy today by implementing some of these suggestions here. Let's move on. Building a positive identity. There's no reason why this is not the time to do it. Communicate, communicate, communicate it. This is not the time to be bashful. This is a time, as difficult as it is, to differentiate yourself and let people know through personal video messaging, social media posts, and email communications about, sure, the challenges you're having, but what you're doing today in the community to make a difference. Next. Let everybody know how you're dealing with the crisis and how they can help. Provide resources, but do this. Don't make people, even like me, to go on people's websites and have to hunt for information. How do we get a hold of somebody? Make it readily clear about what you're asking for, a day of giving, and how you can help. Know why here. But there's 4 things, if we can, I want to focus in on this section here, Michelle. Okay. First thing. I know, let's say you have this here, but number 1, your organization now, today, more than ever before, needs a clear, compelling, and inspirational vision and a plan of action to move beyond the crisis. So often, our organizations have a vision statement that is either unrealistic, like we're gonna feed the world, or we're gonna make every child self-sufficient, or their vision statement is more just another mission statement and bigger. Few have a vision that everybody in your organization can cite for you. Walk around your organization today and ask your board if they can articulate the vision. Ask members of your team, can you articulate your vision? Oftentimes the vision statements are done for accreditation purposes, but here's what I want you to do. Have a vision that is a clearly realistic, credible, attractive future for your organization. Not something you're doing today. Articulate the destination to which your organization should aim, a future that in so many ways is better, more successful, more desirable than today. It should be a signpost pointing the way for all who need to understand where you intend to go. It should inspire you. I remember years ago, there was an organization that I was involved with that had some medical center had a vision statement like, we want to be the premier monkey muck. We want to be the premier teaching research medical center in the world. It was about them. Today, their vision statement is that we want to empower our community to improve their health status. Make it about those you serve, but make it aspirational. Move on next here. This is a time also to be and you are, but evaluating your programs and the impact they're having, and ask yourself a few questions. Which current programs or services obviously do you need to expand if you can? Which ones do you need to eliminate or consolidate? Which ones you may need to develop? But certainly, this is the time also to really talk about collaboration with other organizations. This is the time not to be constantly going sort of solo on this here. This is a time for collaboration. Number 3. I created the term years ago called the nonprofit stock price. Now everybody tells me, I know, you're a nonprofit, everything else like that, but I always used to ask my board when my days of running medical centers was, how's our stock price doing today? And as long as we're not on the front page of the newspaper, we did pretty well here. But I want to make sure that your stock price is doing well. And I want to ensure that your communications are effectively communicating your achievements and successes. Don't be bashful about that. You want to engage everybody as an ambassador. Overall, you want to create a winning attitude amongst everybody. So follow your stock price here. Number 4. In spite of how difficult, it's interesting. If you follow the governor's polls, I'm not going to pick any one person, but oftentimes politicians have low poll ratings. But if you see people, particularly in New Jersey, New York, and Ohio, where the governors have done actually a great job communicating, their ratings have gone up sky high compared to where they were beginning. Maybe this is a time for you as a leader. In spite of all the challenges and staff that can't show up to work because they're working at home, and all the challenges you got, this maybe is a time to increase your stock price. And I think that's a time to do that. Number 4 is this here. I've said this for a long time. Remember, nonprofits, your tax status, not your business plan. This is a very, very difficult time. This is a very difficult time. I know that, okay? I see this here. My wife is a surgical nurse practitioner who went to work every day in a gown and a mask, or she when she got into the office, she did it, see surgical patients. I know what it's like. I know the hundreds of people that are in a hospital on ventilators. I see what's going on. Both of my sons have had the coronavirus on the West Coast. Thank God they're all doing very well. I know what this is like. I know what this is like. But we need to emphasize that a high-performing nonprofit board and leader makes sure that you have a compelling vision, that you are making progress towards an achievement that's measurable, and on a regular basis, the entire organization understands how you're measuring it and is aligned to get it here. Next. The last section here, being an inspirational, motivational leader. You know, somewhere along the line in your career, you decided to be a leader. You decide to be a leader. I decided to be a leader. I clearly wasn't born one, I can tell you that for sure. This is it. This is perhaps the most important aspect of your job today, is being an inspirational motivator to everybody, your staff, your board, your volunteers, your donors. This is a time for you, when they're looking to you. I know how scared you can be, afraid of getting ill, afraid, the fears are among us. I get it. I tell people my wife won't let me out of the house. I tried telling her, even prisoners get out for an hour a day. She told me to go get arrested. This is a time to step up, and I know all of you can do this. This is a time to rally your team. This is a time to lead your organization forward. This is a time for leadership. This is a time to understand people's emotions, right? The emotional intelligence side. This is a time to ask your board to be your partners, not just all in favor, say I get approval and be on with it. This is the time to create leadership talent and leadership development and build pride. This is the time to create that culture of philanthropy. This is the time to build your stock price. This is a great time, actually, in this sense. Not a great time that people are dying. Don't get me wrong, and I apologize for it seems like that. But in every crisis, there's an opportunity. In every crisis, there's an opportunity. And I'm going to leave you with this one, my favorite quote, and I wish I could tell you it was mine, but it's not, okay? American poet Maya Angelou wrote, and stated the following here. People may and will forget what you told them. They're going to forget what you did. But they're never going to forget how you made them feel. I hope today's discussion with all of you, there's hundreds of people on the call today. I hope all of you know the opportunity that you have to exude your passion, your quest for excellence, listening to people here. And the question sometimes, why some people with great causes and good people, why do some succeed, don't? But it's their just passion for why it's their passion. They find a way to get it done. They find things for connecting it. Let's move on if we can, Michelle. So let's just close with this here. I mean, let's constantly re-examine as a leader, top to bottom, your organization, your expectations, your communication. Create that attitude, as difficult it is, that this is the place to be. We know you have no money to pay anybody, but this is the time to be. You want to pat someone on the back and they work remotely, just give someone a call. Give someone a phone call and say, hey, Jane, John, it's Dennis, or it's Bob, or it's Mark, or Jill, whatever. And say, listen, I know you're doing a great job. How you doing? How you feeling? I want to thank you. That's what leadership's about, okay? This crisis, this pandemic, 2 months ago, I couldn't have imagined not going to a baseball game. This has impacted our world. There's 250,000 people that have died, okay? But as I said, this horrible tragedy is creating opportunities, but if we rise above it and we steer our organization through the most challenging of all time into a brighter, more successful future. I don't know how long this is going to last. My anticipation is a lot longer. So I want to point out a couple of things here. There's some 3 books that I really recommend. One is Being a Supervisor 1.0, my colleague and partner in crime, Joe Duffy. Daniel Goldberg's book, Emotional Intelligence, is an excellent book here. And Governance and Leadership, Framing the Work of the Board, is a really, really good book that I would highly recommend you read here. Michelle, you want to take over from here?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for coming. I just wanted to point out, in addition to getting a video of this webinar along with the slides, there's the Dennis Miller Library books that can support what you're trying to do to build your board, to build your staff, and also to build yourself personally. I recommend his autobiography as something to read if you're thinking about going through your challenges today and in the future. You can also visit www.denniscmiller.com for additional resources. There are recordings of webinars, there are blog posts. It's just a very rich source of materials to support the work that you do in the nonprofit sector. We've got upcoming webinars. Don't forget, feel free to register for all of them. The next one will be next Wednesday at this time about transforming how you manage your workforce talent. And we've got a guest speaker coming from Telexis Management Solutions for that. So that's going to be really useful and interesting. If you'd like to take a deeper dive into becoming a high-performing nonprofit organization, I can recommend Dennis's online courses. Each course has a runtime of about an hour or so, but they're split into shorter modules so that you can work with your board and with your executive team as time allows. And actually, it's a great way to approach these courses because it gives you time to really contemplate and discuss and sort out where you are in each of the areas that he discusses in the webinars. You can enroll a 6-month subscription to each course at his website, dennismiller.com, Board Leadership Institute online courses. And last but not least, I've got some questions. Dennis, you're still with us, right?
I'm here, but I also want everybody to know that since April, and I'm going to carry this through June, Michelle, anybody is my way of sort of giving back. Any board member, any nonprofit executive, anybody that would like a complimentary consultation with myself, just have a conversation. Email me, dennis@denniscmiller.com. It's a little typo down there, Michelle. That's okay.
I see that now.
You'll stay on for another 15 years.
Yes.
You have to
DennisCmiller.com.
Because Dennis Miller Associates is actually a furniture store in Brooklyn. So Dennis@denniscmiller.com.
I'm happy to have a conversation with you or your board, anything you want here for free. Just want to help. Why don't I help you out?
Okay, so Dennis, one question that came through earlier is, can you say a little bit about how the CEO can be out there in the community as chief sales officer in this time of work from home and social distancing? How does she have a presence in this time?
It's a very good question. I think certainly, I just got off the phone the other day with a CEO, just became a CEO, and he was like, just got appointed, actually voted from within. You can't be out there physically right now. I mean, you can't be on the street corner, but what you can do is this, you know, find someone voluntarily to help you put a little video together and make sure that you're on your website. There's a little video from you communicating to everybody that goes onto your website about who you are, what you're trying to do, how they can help. E-newsletters, or, you know, with constant contact or other props, but I would make sure that you're out there communicating virtually right now. Excuse me, following up down the road here, but you can't be outside, but you can be virtually communicating. That's very important. Iced tea's going down the wrong tube, Michelle.
Uh-oh. Hang in there, because there's more questions.
Any other questions?
All right. Can you say a bit more on how the board president can play an important role in supporting the CEO in this coronavirus time? Figuring, you know, assuming that the CEO is busy taking care of the agency, staff, and clients and family, and might be needing some support.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it shouldn't take the coronavirus to be supporting your CEO, but I would be speaking to them as often as I can and let them know that you're here. How can I help you? What can I do? Knowing you got my support, you know, and how can we all help you? And then one of the things that, as you know, the board can all be your partners in this here. This is time to really, honestly, and lay it on the table. This is time to step up and be the kind of nonprofit board that we need to have in order to get the results you want. This is time to move away from the passive role. But as a board chair, and I've been a board chair, it's a time to tell your CEO or executive director, you got their back, what they need from you, best wishes to their wife and a husband or partner or friend. It's a time to let them know that you're there for them. That's the best thing you can possibly do.
Mm-hmm. One more, sort of a comment, but I think it really raises a question that we received a comment that this is, you know, this webinar is very timely because, you know, people are really thinking about how to go forward in new ways, because, you know, it's not, certainly hasn't been business as usual, and it won't be for presumably a long time, but people are hesitant. And what would you say to that when people are hesitant, and I think there are good reasons for feeling that way, but how would you respond to that?
Yeah, listen, I was hesitant. I'll be honest with you. We were rolling out our online courses about how to become a high-performing nonprofit board and a high-performing nonprofit executive leadership team in a couple months ago, and I just pulled back. I mean, I was meeting with people around the country and Washington, other places here. But here's the deal. I mean, we're going to need to move on. And I think that, you know, again, I'm doing everything virtually. I rarely go out of the house, maybe take a walk up the street here. But I do think, and I'm not talking about going outside and taking a risk and being at a movie theater or being in a restaurant. But I think this is the time to use common sense. As nonprofits, we have to let people know what we're doing, who we are, how they can help. We need to make sure that as a CEO, we're talking to every member of our board in a conversation. That's what we need to do. We can probably have more virtual board meetings than just meeting once a month or every quarter, something like that. And I think that this is the time to step up to the plate. This is the time to hopefully, you know, think about some of the things, because I want to help. You know, I mean, I've had a very good life. You know, I've had a good life after overcoming a lot of challenges that most people know as a kid. And I wanted to help and give back. But I think this is the time, though, to take action, even when you're still practicing social distance. This is the time to let your staff know you're there for them. This is a time to step up and be that motivational leader.
Well, I think we're at time, Dennis.
Well,
So,
if we have
yeah.
a few questions, I'll stay here. They can jump up, but I'll take any questions that are left. I don't want anybody to not have a question. So
Yeah,
if we,
I think, no, that's pretty much it. So we're good.
okay. Well, I thank you, Michelle. I thank every one of you, and please feel free to get a hold of me and look for the new email address. Not Dennis Shun, which is
Yeah.
always a
I know. I just sent that in a message to everybody, the correct email address. Yes, if questions occur to you later, by all means.
Thank you,
get in touch.
everybody. God bless you all. And yeah, this is tough, but think about this. It's probably about 150 people on this call. We're all on this together. You're not alone. And that's why we're offering these free webinars. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.